Yo, what up, Pat? What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well, cannot complain. So you are word on the street is you are full time back on Twitter. So what's up with that?
Yeah, I am. I decided that during this new career search that I wanted to start to market myself a little more in every way possible. I created a website showing off my creative works. I've been doing a bit more with LinkedIn. And I thought, you know what, if I get back on Twitter, I could really market myself in a number of ways. And, part of me was really kind of missing the old sports interaction with people. And, since there's a lot of sports going on right now, I figured, hey, let's get back on it. I took a break for a while. I think it was good, but now I think where I am in life, I can kind of get back and try to use it to my advantage, really. So
Yeah.
here I am.
Yeah, the break is always good. I contemplate that myself from time and again. But anyway, it's good to chat with you. Good to connect with you as we've been doing this. So like I don't know, a couple times the last few months. So and I like that you hit me up to do it because it's always fun to do it with you. But I'm glad that you're excited. So that's always the main thing. But
Yeah, I love doing this, man. It's always fun. I'm glad that we're able to do this kind of on a more semi regular basis.
yeah. Well, the thing about live streaming is that I don't have to really edit it. So it's kind of just literally just do it, turn it on and just start talking. But
Yeah, yeah.
but so anyway, I'm wearing a Lester jersey. I'm assuming the Wrigleyville jersey that you're wearing is also Jon Lester, right? Or is it?
This is blank. It's just
Okay.
blank.
Okay. So either way, we were gonna do this anyway, but it just happened to coincide with Jon Lester announcing his retirement. So I figured anyway, we'll talk about Jon Lester's legacy. So obviously first significant signing for the Cubs winning era going into that 2015 season. It might be the best Chicago free agent, definitely the best Cubs free agent, but might be the best overall Chicago sports free agent. I know Marion Host's name gets, added to that quite a bit, but that's, up for debate regardless. Both are great. But so I was kind of going over some of Jon Lester's numbers. So, we can drill into the analytics or whatever. I don't care. Basically, I was just gonna say, his overall career record was 200 and 117, 3.66 ERA, just under 2,500 career strikeouts. He was 77 and 44 as a Cub, 9-7 in his postseason career with a 2.51 ERA, 4-1 in the World Series. Of course, he won a few with the Red Sox with an under 2 ERA. So I put the question, Hall of Fame, like he's definitely borderline, and I think he probably gets in. You can definitely make a compelling case. I think when you look at the numbers, the postseason numbers, I know the win stat is pretty devalued these days, but he might be the last starter. I don't know. I'm not looking at pitchers right now. And if there is anyone that's close to 200 wins, they're towards the end of their career too. But 200, 300 used to be a magical number that'll never be seen again.
Yeah.
200 is probably never going to really be seen again. So I think Lester's probably as greatest shot as I saw, like I was thinking about it. I saw someone actually put this, they mentioned Andy Pettit. I know the steroid stuff, whatever, that aside, he's got even more wins and some other stuff, just like Lester. So I mean, I could see them both making that case. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, I think he's more than just a borderline Hall of Famer. I think he's probably a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that you can make the case for him. You mentioned a lot of good numbers, the strikeouts. You mentioned, I don't put any stock in wins, but 200 wins,
I
especially
mean,
in
it
this
sticks
day and
out.
age, it
Yeah.
does. It does. And, the other thing too with John Lester is he was so consistent and so
Hmm.
durable through the prime of his career. Year after year, he was starting 30 plus games. He rarely missed a ton of time in his career. I mean, he was just pounding out 30 plus starts every year. He was hitting 200 plus innings every year. And, after 2016 is when you started to see kind of the tapering off, when it kind of started to kind of slide. It was about age 33. And you consider, okay, 33 might not be ancient, but you consider how many miles he had on his arm for all those years. I mean, when you're pitching year after year of 30 plus starts and 200 plus innings, and then all those postseason games he pitched in, that's a lot of extra, pitching as well, right there.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, the guy really made his legacy with postseason pitching. one of the best postseason pitchers ever, and probably the arguably the best postseason pitcher in the modern postseason era. And when I say that, I mean an era where you have at least 3 rounds of postseason. So division series, championship series, World Series. I definitely put him at the top there. I mean, a 2.51 ERA in all those postseason games he pitched in. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
He won 3 World Series, and almost every other year he was in the postseason. So that's a lot of starts right there. I know regular season numbers are the magic numbers, but I feel like when you're voting Hall of Fame, you got to consider
Yeah.
postseason as well, and that really helps him out. Now he's not a first ballot, and I think it's going to take a while to get there. The strikeouts are good, but they're not like Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that's that. I don't think there's any debate about that. Lester didn't dominate with that kind of electric stuff, but he was just so consistently good for so long. So I do think eventually he does deserve to get into the Hall of Fame, and that always, you know, makes me remember this saying I always have too is Jon Lester's going to the Hall of Fame. Then no doubt Cole Hamels is going to the Hall of Fame. Go look at his numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
And
good point.
they're kind of similar pitchers, Cole Hamels and Jon Lester. They're both lefties. They had good stuff in their career, but they didn't, they weren't throwing 98, 99, but they had good stuff in terms of a repertoire, movement, and location. Cole Hamels was known for having that changeup. And, you go look at Cole Hamels' numbers and you're like, well, if Jon Lester's getting in, he absolutely must get in.
Yeah, Jon Lester. So, like we said, he rounds out his career with an even 200 wins. I remember that 2016 NLDS against the Giants. Him and Johnny Cueto were just dueling, and the Cubs won that game 1-0 thanks to it was the Bias home run, right? And yeah, Jon Lester set the tone for that playoffs. He 19-5 record in the regular season, almost, was a Cy Young candidate that year. So, he really set the tone. Like I said, he was that first big free agent piece that committed to the team. That was going into the 15 season. None of us knew what that team was going to be like. And that was arguably outside. I mean, 16, of course, was super fun, but 15 was probably maybe even more fun just because there were really no quite the expectations yet. Didn't really know what to
I agree.
expect. They got off to, they're okay. They were kind of finding their stride in the early part of 15.
They
They
were a
were,
500-ish team the
yeah.
first half.
And Jon
Yeah.
Lester, I remember Jon Lester, I feel like he kept getting a bunch of, like, either no decisions or the bullpen was letting him
Yes.
down or not getting
Yes.
the offense. And then the second half it clicked. Well, we know what happened, but yeah, I was looking at his numbers and you kind of said it after 16. He kind of fell off a little bit. I mean, in 2018, he actually led baseball with 18 victories. The ERA was good. 17 was kind of a weird year, kind of a high ERA, but
I think
yeah,
part of
very
that was 2016 fatigue, frankly. I
yeah,
think
it
that
might have
whole
been
team was kind
for
of
everyone.
hungover for a while.
Yeah, for everyone, yeah, and that's normal. I mean, any sport, you see it, championship hangovers or whatever you wanna call it, but, I mean, yeah, just a really solid obviously solid career, through the no-hitter with the Red Sox back in the day, a very young Jon Lester back in the day, it's funny, obviously, especially in recent times, you think about the fact that he pitched for that team we won't mention, the Nationals, but even the Oakland A's for half a year in 14 probably I don't know if it gets overlooked. I have to kind of think about it for a minute because, it's kind of 14 was so long ago. It was half a season after the trade deadline. It was just like, oh, yeah, that happened too.
And if you remember in 14, he pitched in that wild card game against the
Yep.
Royals, and it didn't go so well.
Yeah, shout out Seth Poho who kind of reminded me, or I didn't forget, but he kind of put a picture. He was like Royals fans remember his A's his career or his half a season in Oakland, but like I
Remember,
said, it
Ben
worked out.
Zobrist was part of that team too.
Yes. Yeah, Ben Zobrist too. It's funny. I won't debate. Jon Lester is definitely the best Cubs free agent signing, but I like to give the honorable mention to Ben Zobrist too
He's
because
right there. Yeah.
he was such a great player, consummate professional. Like we know what he did. I don't know what the Cubs track record or what happens with that team if they still have Zobrist through we know what happened, like why he left the team and all that. And but as when they had him, they could use his approach at the plate, and he was just, I don't want to say he was a professional hitter, but he was that quote
Oh,
unquote
he was a
professional hitter.
professional
He
hitter.
was, he was, yeah. I know it gets that gets thrown around a bit, but he was like the exact, he's what you want, especially a contact guy who would just come up. He could play all these positions. I mean, he was like, I remember Mark DeRosa. I was a Mark DeRosa fan back on like the
Mhm.
'08 Cubs, but
Mhm.
Zobrist, he could play all the positions. He could hit well. Yeah, he was such a
It
fan
felt like
favorite.
Zobrist every at bat he got to a 3-2 count.
Yep.
Like he was that good. It just he didn't swing and miss a lot at pitches outside the zone. He fouled off a lot of tough pitches and he took the close ones. I mean, he worked every at bat.
Yeah.
Every single at bat that guy worked. And he had an all-star campaign in his first year as a Cub. And then he had kind of an off 2017, but remember he had that wrist injury. And then 2018, he came back and hit over 300. And I know batting average isn't that big of a deal anymore, but when you're a guy like Ben Zobrist, where you're not really a run producer, but more of a table setter and someone to keep the line moving, I
hmm
still think batting average has value in that sense. So him hitting 300 that season with a really good OBP, I mean that's good too. And his OBP was always very solid. As you were talking over 350. That's pretty dang good. And uh, that offseason when they signed Zobrist, that was the same offseason they signed Hayward, and Hayward
hmm
was the big shiny toy that we thought we
Yeah.
were getting, but Zobrist was the one that made the massive impact, and that was the offseason after they signed Lester. And I'll never forget when they signed Lester. I was a junior in college, and I was in bed. It was like 1 in the morning. It was finals week,
Yeah.
and one of my roommates was a big Cub fan, and my other roommate was a big Sox fan. He was fast asleep. My Cubs fan friend roommate was because we had a triple bunk bed. I was in the middle. My Cubs fan friend was at the bottom. And I was getting ready to go to bed because I'm like, all right, I got a final at 10 o'clock tomorrow, which isn't really early, but I wanted to get up and maybe review a few things. It was I think it was like the Wednesday. So it was like I had like 2 more days of finals to get through. So I'm about ready to go to bed. And all of a sudden, the Twitter feed starts blowing up that the Cubs were going to sign Jon Lester. And I remember shaking my friend. I'm like, dude, we just signed Jon Lester. He's like, oh, are you serious? And then my brother texts me. He's like, we got Lester in all caps, an exclamation point. And then my cousin texted me. He's like, yo, dude, we just got Jon Lester. I'm like, oh man, there's so many other Cubs fans I want to talk to right now, but they're all probably asleep by now. So we'll do the celebration the next day. So the next morning, uh, I wake up and I have my one final that day. And then I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to get some friends together. We're going to go down to Jimmy John's or whatever just to get some lunch. So we go down to Jimmy John's and I posted a photo on Facebook with my Jimmy John's sandwich and I
Yeah.
titled it Jimmy John's for Jon Lester. And
Nice.
that's amazing. That was back in December 2014.
Yeah.
And you realize how long ago that was.
Oh yeah, it's crazy because, I just remember thinking like going into the 15 season, and I don't know, it was the rumors or whatever, and they'd gotten, like they had Rizzo, just gotten him from San Diego around that time. And and then they get Lester, and I'm like, this team might be pretty good. And then I thought John Madden's like an obvious, like they have to, or Joe Madden.
John Madden.
John Madden's
RIP.
on Rip, yeah, Rip John Madden, still on the brain, obviously. But Joe Madden was out there, or the rumors were out there, and I'm like, they got to get him. Like that just makes the most sense. And then they did, and then I was like, okay, now they're cooking. I still didn't know how they were going to be in. I think if knowing me, I probably said they'll probably be like an 80-win team in 15, give or take, something like
Yeah.
that. And
500. That's
and
what
that
I
might have
thought.
been, yeah, that's kind of where they were trending in the first half. And I mean, who knows? No one ever could have foreseen Jake Arrieta doing what he was doing, but
And
obviously
that
great.
kind of overshadowed Lester as the
Yeah,
season went on. And people can look, oh, Jon Lester's first season wasn't really good. Well, actually, a
it was pretty good.
3.35 ERA and a 2.92 or 2.94, whatever it was, fielding independent pitching, that's really good. Like, really, really good. And his strikeouts per nine were a tad higher in 15 than 16 because he struck out 197 batters in 16 And in 15, I think he struck out like 200 and something. So it was
Mhm.
only a difference of a few, but still, I mean, Lester was really good. But like you said, he got a lot of no decisions in 2015. And a lot of those no decisions came when the Cubs were still kind of figuring things out when Chris Bryan
Mhm.
first came up and like Addison Russell first came up and Baez came back up later in the season, during that 500. And then when things kind of clicked, there he was. And if you remember, he pitched a pretty good game against the Cardinals in game one of the DS, but
Mhm.
John Lackey shut them out. So a good effort was kind of all for naught.
Best
Um,
friends.
yeah, the big buddies,
Yeah.
long memory.
Yeah, but, yeah, it was just a fun the Lester was a five-time All-Star. He was the NLCS co-MVP with Baez in 16,
Hmm.
2015, yeah, that was just a fun time, but, yeah, and I mean, really, I mean, outside of the latter stages of his Cubs career, he gave you everything you could have hoped for and more, because everybody knows the risk of the big with any contract, but, and, Max Scherzer is like in a league of his own to basically outperform like that entire contract and then do even more and get more going to the Mets. But Lester was about as great as you could have hoped for. And I mean, I think everybody would have been satisfied if he gave you, I don't know, 4 years out of that deal. But he was
2016 alone made it worth it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But yeah, the numbers speak for themselves, but, yeah, it's kinda surprising that he was only I mean, again, wins don't really matter the way they used to, although I will still say the idea is to win, and he did that quite a bit. He was the NL wins leader in 18, so, only led the league once, but, it just shows you how good he was. You said how durable he was, and I wanted to shout out new follower, Marco underscore, I think it's Scola, Scola. He had a tweet that I thought was really cool. 33 pitchers in history have won at least 200 games, or 200 or more games, struck out 2,400 or more batters, and had a career ERA less than 370. 24 of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. However, of that group, only three have won at least or won three World Series: Kurt Schilling, Don Drysdale, and Jon Lester. So, I mean, that's a Hall of Fame stat right there in terms of all those guys he listed, or 33 pitchers of those
Yeah, when you're being
credentials in the
compared to
Hall of
Don
Fame.
Drysdale, that's good company.
And, just the fact that 33 pitchers have done what he's done and they're in the Hall of Fame kinda speaks for itself, like, Lester's probably among that group too, so, um, but, yeah, and I also like the idea of retiring, doing a co-retirement for 34 Wood/Lester, like, they could each get their own little whatever celebration, same day, kinda like a co-34 thing, they could do that, they could make that happen.
Well, you got to remember too, 31 is retired at Wrigley Field for both Ferguson Jenkins and Greg Maddux. And those two guys are
Mhm.
two of the very few guys to ever strike out more than 3,000 hitters and walk less than 1,000 batters.
Yeah.
That to me, and Ferguson Jenkins was the first ever pitcher to do that. That, in my opinion, is mind blowing.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, if they did it for those two, they could. I mean, like, would you say? I mean, what is definitely worthy of having his number retired, right? I mean, he was a really good Cub.
Yeah, you know, if he didn't get hurt the way he did, you could have seen flirting with Hall of Fame numbers, I think. But unfortunately, the issues with the arm came right away. And that's the thing. We can get mad at Dusty Baker for Mark Pryor, but Kerry Wood, those issues were there before. And Dusty Baker didn't make it any better. By any means, he didn't make it any better. But did you ever watch the documentary about the 20 strikeout game that the Cubs came out with a few years ago?
I don't think I saw it because I don't think I had a chance. I don't think I had the means to be able to watch it, but I could
It's
probably
on
find it
YouTube.
online. Oh, okay. I'll have to look
The
for
whole
it.
thing's on YouTube.
Okay.
So, if you remember, in 1999, Wood missed that whole season
Hmm.
because of the arm injury. Uh, what Wood describes in that 20 strikeout game is when he threw that final pitch
Huh.
to strike out his 20th batter,
Yeah.
he's like, I felt something in my elbow.
Hmm.
Like, not good something. And the 20 strikeout game is probably my all-time favorite Cub regular season game to rewatch more than
Mhm.
any other regular season game. But that game might have changed the path of his career and not in a great way. But you
Yeah.
gotta respect that Kerry Wood was still able to grind away and reshape himself. The fact that he reshaped himself into a good reliever, he could
Mhm.
have easily just been done after like 2005.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I was gonna say, going back to that 20 strikeout game, I remember, like, seeing his face. Now, any pitcher, like, it's hard to know what they're thinking when they go through any kind of, performance on the field or, whatever, but, I figured he was probably super exhausted and just probably, like, hadn't even processed it as it was all happening, but he
He
did
didn't
have
even
this
know.
he did have this sort of expression, like, I don't know, like, when you described that about the potential injury at that time, I'm like, maybe that was part of his face, like, maybe he was like, "Man, like, something doesn't feel right," but he was
Yeah.
probably just I don't know. But, yeah, I think that game I don't know where I saw it or heard this now, but I think I heard that game was considered, like, the greatest pitching performance of all time, and that's, of course, not a perfect game, but it was because it was the potential of at least a no-hitter, 20 strikeouts. I mean, it was like what? His like fourth career start or something like that. He shut down a pretty good Astros lineup with guys like, Bagwell and Berkman and
Oh, that was
Biggio. And I
arguably the
mean,
best National League lineup.
oh yeah,
Was the
Hall of
The
Famers.
Astros, yeah.
Moises Alou was in there. So I
Yes,
mean,
he was.
just it's fun to go back and I was watching that recently, like a YouTube. It's like a 5 minute, all the strikeouts real fast. But I remember Steve Stone and Chip Curry were the broadcasters for that game, and I think it was Steve Stone had the craziest, ugliest like sweater you've ever seen.
Yes. Yes,
But
he did.
yeah, man, that was definitely a fun game for sure. But yeah, I mean, I get the argument if you would say maybe Wood doesn't quite have enough to get his number retired, but I could definitely see it. I think that, for his on-field performances, he had, really good numbers as a Cub, at least when he was healthy. You said he came back as a reliever. His on the field, off the field. So I don't know. I feel like you could definitely make the case for it.
Well, he'll always have a place in my heart, and, he was, my first real memories of, like, detailed Cubs was early 2000s, and I'll never forget 2003 when him and Wood were, like, the dynamic duo. Those 2, I mean, they were 2 fireballers that were taking the league by storm, and, it's funny too is you can look at Arrieta and Lester in 2015 and be
Yeah.
like, "That was even better." But, I mean, just the 2003 Cubs were built around those 2 guys, basically.
Oh
Obviously,
yeah.
you had Sammy Sosa and Moises Alou, but the
Montoya.
headlines of the 2003 Cubs were those 2 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, with the 2015, Arrieta ended up being the biggest player on the team, but it was a lot about Chris Bryant and
Hmm.
Javi Baez, and at the time, Addison
Rizzo.
Russell,
Yeah.
Rizzo.
Yeah.
Um, that's really what the story was surrounded about. And like 2003, it was the first year of bringing in a big time manager. 03
Yep.
was Dusty Baker, and
Yep.
2015 was Madden. So, um, I mean, it was 2015 was really the start of something special. And, they won 97 games. That was the same amount of games the '08 Cubs won, if you remember.
Oh yeah. Yep. I remember that. I thought the '08 Cubs were gonna win it all, but we don't have
So
to
did
go into that.
everybody.
Yeah. Well, my favorite thing about the '08 Cubs is Cub legend Jim Edmonds. I mean, how great was
Yes.
that? I love Jim Edmonds as a Cub.
Me too. And I remember when he first came to the Cubs, like people booed him at Wrigley Field.
Yeah, of course.
It was like it was kind of like when Daniel Murphy came over.
Mhm.
And but the thing was is that there was a long, long history between the Cubs and Jim Edmonds. And he was old, but he did a good job. He hit like 19 home runs that year. And he was honestly one of their most clutch hitters that year was Jim Edmonds. And I often think about, man, if the OA Cubs would have won it all, the thought of Jim Edmonds holding the World
Oh,
Series trophy as they're going down Michigan Avenue would just be hilarious.
that would have been something. Um, yeah, if Lester does go into the Hall of Fame, Is it as a Red Sox or a Cub?
Yeah, they asked him that on the radio today. He was doing
Mhm.
an interview with Spiegel and Parkins, and he's like, "Oh man, I can't really answer that." Honestly, let's be real. It's probably going to be a Red Sox.
Maybe.
Spent more years there, won more championships there. It's the team that brought him up. It's the team that he beat cancer with. I
Mm,
mean, I'd love to see him as a Cub, but I think Boston makes the most sense.
makes sense. I mean, I guess he's not going in as like an Oakland A or a National.
Or a Cardinal.
Oh, we weren't even gonna mention that, but that's true.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fair.
he
That's
was.
fair.
Yeah, you're right. He was with Boston for a few more years. Had a lot more wins. Well, he had more opportunities, obviously.
Had a no-hitter there.
The ERA in Chicago and Boston were each 3.64, which is kind of
And the
fun.
winning percentage is the same too, I believe.
Yeah, 636.
Isn't that crazy?
Crazy. It's always weird when stuff like that happens. Like, just I don't know, but yeah, he was as great a free agent as you could have hoped for. Yeah, so really cool stuff. Good for Lester. Great career. Did you ever see him pitch live?
Many times.
I saw
Many
him.
times.
You know what? I was thinking I've definitely seen him at least twice. I was thinking for sure when I was in Atlanta in 2016. I did see Lester and Arrieta pitch back to back days, which is really cool. They won both games, so I did see Lester pitch in Atlanta. I do remember though I did see him pitch in Washington. This is the first. So I had I mean I haven't seen the Cubs live a lot, but I they were like something like 8-0, 6-0 when I had seen them live. So now I'm on a bit of a losing streak, but I don't know if this was I think this is the last game I was at actually, 2019. But I saw it was Cubs and Nationals. It was I think I've talked about this. It was the Joe Madden protesting that game because of the Carl Edwards and the motion or whatever. And then it wasn't Edwards, but it was because of that situation. McDougal for the Nat or Doolittle, Sean Doolittle was doing the motion and Joe Madden was protesting that game because
Mm-hmm.
Edwards in spring training was told he couldn't make this motion anymore, and so he was like, "Well, what about Sean Doolittle?" But anyway, Lester was in that game, and they got beat up in that game pretty good. But anyway, so I've seen him pitch at least a couple times live, but the one in Atlanta sticks out mainly. 2016 and in Atlanta, beat up the Braves. So I don't know. Thinking that might have been it. I don't know. But anyway, was there a specific signature game from Lester that you saw that you remember?
Well, I'll share this one. This little fun factoid. I saw Jon Lester's first career extra base hit that came in 2015.
Oh yeah,
I
15. Yeah.
also saw, or 16. In 15, I saw his first career hit.
Oh right, right.
I saw his first career hit. I saw his first career extra base hit, which was a double off the wall. And then I saw him hit, I believe it was his final career home run in 2019 against the Pirates.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I've seen some good highlights of Jon Lester hitting the ball. That same game, he hit like a 3-run double as well off the wall as well. So he was slugging it that game. I remember it was early on in the 15 season, and I saw him pitch against the Pirates, and he pitched a really, really good game. And that was maybe his fifth or sixth start as a Cub, but he looked really, really solid there. Yeah, I've seen him a handful of times, and
Yeah.
he's been pretty solid every time out. So, uh, being able to get to watch him in person was really, really fun. And you could definitely tell that there was an energy in the stadium when he took the mound. So, everyone knew just how important Jon Lester was to everybody.
Oh yeah, Jon Lester was a star, just a stud, but a good guy off the field, of course. And yeah, I mean, he's what you want when anytime you sign a guy like that, you hope to get half of what Jon Lester was able to do. So good luck to John in retirement, but I don't think it's the last we'll hear of him. I'm sure maybe we'll see. I don't know. He's probably just ready to be in Atlanta. I think that's where he lives in the offseason and hunt and do whatever. But good for Jon Lester. Now, before we close, we'll transition, talk a little hockey. Did you watch the Blackhawks Blue Jackets game last night?
Yeah, I did. I was flipping between that and the Bulls game. And, obviously the Bulls are really exciting right now, and the Blackhawks haven't really been. They're on a little 2-game win streak, but It was one of those games where it didn't look good for the Hawks early, but then, they kind of found a groove. And, when the Blackhawks have actually won games this year, they've never dominated. They never looked great like they did when they were winning Stanley Cups, but
Mhm.
they at least just looked competent last night because there have been plenty of times where they haven't looked very competent.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a stat real fast. I was doing the 3 things on that game, and, what I saw was, of course, the Blackhawks won 4-2. Um, the Blue Jackets actually it was actually their best game in terms of not giving up a lot of shot attempts. The Hawks only had 33 shot attempts. They only had like 20 some shots on goal anyway. But
Hmm.
the Blue Jackets just couldn't get any offense. They scored first. Hawks answered fast. That's been a narrative for the Blue Jackets, giving up a lot of goals really fast. It was just kind of like the sense of like either team could really, the Blackhawks started to get more momentum in that second period on, and they capitalized only on 3 shots on goal in the second period, but it was just one of those games where it was, like, kinda right there for either team, and Hawks were able to capitalize, but, yeah, the Blackhawks, they came into the season with, kind of these, I guess, playoff hopes. I never thought of them as more of a bubble playoff team to begin with, and then they
Same.
got off to a horrible start. Jeremy Colleton was awful. Derek King, that's the name, right? Derek King?
Yes. Yeah.
He, I wanna make sure I wanted to make sure Derek was right. Um he has a winning record with the Hawks. They seem to be responding. I don't know if he's like their main long-term answer. It's really hard to say with this team because they have a mix of young guys like, you got the Brinket and you still got Kane and you still got um Connor Murphy. I'm just thinking of names now,
Tays.
but yeah, Tays. Well, he's more of just like Kane though. They're still very effective, but kind of on the older side of it. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They have this mix. So it's hard to understand their plan. Of course, the front office, is new basically after the scandal and having to get rid of guys and all that. So Seth Jones didn't play because of the COVID positive test yesterday, which would have been, of course, his reunion game back in
Mhm.
Columbus. But
Mhm.
and he's kind of come on. But I saw this stat earlier. So I like Seth Jones a lot. I thought he was going to be the next Blue Jackets captain. I thought, he's going to be back, but then they couldn't get the contract thing and it worked out. As far as the trade, I think the Hawks are happy with Seth Jones. But from the Blue Jacket side of things, they got Adam Beauquist, who played his 100th career game last night. He's been really solid. He's got 14 points and 5 in his last 6 games. He's leading defenseman in 5v5 goals per 60, which is interesting.
Hmm.
And that's taking into account studs like Cal McCarr and Adam Fox and all these top defensemen, even Seth Jones. I mean, I won't be surprised if Seth Jones is, ahead of that at the end of the year. But I like the Blue Jackets side of that with Boquist. They got the pick that turned into Cole Sillinger, whose dad, Mike, played in Columbus back in the day. And then they got the pick that got Jake Bean. So my thing is like, yeah, Seth Jones is great by himself, but he's a win now situation. The Blackhawks are trying to be a win now team, and I don't really see it, especially not just this year, but beyond this year. I'm not sure what their plan's going to be. But Pat, did you freeze up? I think you froze up. Did I lose you? All right, we'll be back.